Okay, the moment you've all been waiting for. We are going to talk about troubleshooting technology. Dealing with technology challenges is an inevitable part of being an online tutor. It doesn't have to be painful, though. So, there are a lot of things you can do in the way you set up your technology and set up expectations with your students to prevent tech problems. First of all, make sure you know what devices your students have. That's a question you can ask parents when you're registering them. Will the student be participating in lessons from a laptop, from a Chromebook? What tools do they plan to use? And then know a little bit about those tools, know what they can and can't do. My Facebook group is a great place to ask those questions because there are a ton of people who are experienced with tutoring with Macs and Windows computers and Chromebooks and iPads. And if you don't own that device personally, it really helps to ask around and ask someone in the group if they've tried this feature, if this feature works with this device. Another thing to do that really helps you see what the Zoom lesson looks like on both sides is to practice with the tools, either with a friend or family member or from two devices in your own home. I have to check quick things. I've logged into meetings on my computer and also on my phone so I can see what the shared screen looks like. I have worked with colleagues to log in a from an iPad and a Chromebook and a laptop, and we just try out different features from different devices and see how they work. And that way you know what it is reasonable to ask your student to do and what's going to be difficult given their technology. So features you want to test out on all these devices is how do they connect? What buttons do they hit? How do they work? What does it look like? Can they screen share? What does it look like when they screen share? Practice sharing Google Documents and seeing what they look like when you receive a shared document, when you open it on another machine. Practice taking control of the screen within Zoom. So see what it looks like when you give your student mouse control and they're on an iPad or they're on a laptop. You won't be able to do that on a Chromebook. That's important to know. And also play with the annotate tools on different devices and see what some of the differences are. Another thing that is really important if you are going to include games in your lesson is to have some idea of how those games will play if the student's device is different from your device. So there are a couple parts to that. One is if you're sharing control of your screen and asking them to control the game, they may experience some lag as they drag and drop things. They may not be seeing things as they're happening on the screen. And another issue is the game may play differently if they have a touch screen or a mouse pad as opposed to a like touchpad as opposed to a mouse, or if they have a tablet instead of a computer. So make sure that you sort of anticipate the differences between the devices as you plan your lesson. Congratulations, you're promoted, you're now tech support. When I've worked in bigger schools, there's always somebody to call. So there you can always put in a ticket if a device breaks, and a nice person will come down the hall from the office and restart it and check the connections and update software. But if you're working for yourself as an online tutor, that's all you. You are tech support. So to understand the process of troubleshooting a problem, remember that problems can happen at the point of your computer, the student's computer, your internet connection or theirs, or it can happen at the software level. It can be a problem reaching Zoom or Google. It can be a particular online game is down that day. You can also have difficulties due to peripherals, so headphones, mouse, stylus, monitor, keyboard, camera, microphone. Any of these things can interrupt the sound or video or functions in a meeting. So unfortunately, there are a lot of options, but there are some common steps that will help you figure these out or help you eliminate any of these problems. There's a reason that the first thing that tech support says when you call them is turn it off and turn it on again. Restarting a device can help to resolve a lot of issues. Some of the issues come from a device running too long, or a program can be started or closed on a device that affects the way the whole system runs. So if you're having some kind of global issue with a device, one solution is to just turn it off and turn it on again. If it's something like a mouse or headphones, you can try unplugging them and plugging them back in, or logging out of the Zoom meeting and logging back in. And all of those options give you a fresh start. Typically, I ask my students to restart their computers before our session every day, because the longer a device is running, the more things are running in the background and the computer slows down over time. Another basic step is to make sure that they're joining the meeting from a powerful enough computer. Old Chromebooks in particular are very slow and lead to a lot of video and audio lag. Um, I was troubleshooting with one family and I said, when she meets with me in the living room, she has a terrible connection every time. But when she meets with me in the office, the signal's much better. I'm not sure if the internet signal is stronger in that part of the house. And the parent said, well, when she meets with you in the living room, it's because the main laptop in the office isn't available. And so we put her on the old Chromebook at the table in the living room. And we realized that it's not the internet at all, it's the Chromebook itself. So making sure that your students have the right device to start with, and making sure that they do a fresh restart before they meet with you, and also that you routinely restart your computer, either shut it down at night and open it up in the morning, or if you've been working on other things before tutoring, restart the computer before you begin tutoring. Make sure you and the student know how to test audio and video in Zoom before the meeting. Be sure that your devices are charged or plugged in properly. Make sure that your students are charging their devices before meeting with you. And make sure you have a backup plan in place for any technology that's tricky, like wireless headsets or a new mouse or anything that is new to you or that tends to not work every time. Checking your audio in Zoom is a quick step, but it's kind of hidden in a menu. So I'll show you how to do that. So when you're logged into the Zoom meeting, this little triangle button next to the mute button opens this menu, and you choose Test Speaker and Microphone. And you'll be able to see from the dropdown if you have more than one microphone available. Here I have the one that's plugged into my computer, and I also have a system microphone, which is the internal microphone in the computer. And the speakers, I have just my computer speakers set up at the moment. So when you click test, it asks you to speak, and it will play back what you say so that you can tell if the microphone is picking up your voice. And then it'll play a tone and you'll see if you can hear it. So if the student logs into a Zoom meeting and they can't hear me, this is one of the things I ask them to do, especially if I test my own and I ask them to test theirs. And that helps us determine where the sound issue is coming from. Technology can take up time in an online tutoring session, and so it's worthwhile to put in your policies some things about expectations around technology. So one, what will you do if technology fails? If you are a Zoom user, is your backup plan to go to Google Meet, or is your backup plan to finish the lesson by phone? What is your go-to solution if technology fails? At what point do you and the student cancel a session? My policy says if the technology is not working, we will, by mutual agreement, decide either to continue the lesson on Meet, continue it by phone, or reschedule to another time. And if it's a technology issue, unless it is clear that it is their technology issue, if there's more than a 50% chance of it being my issue, I treat it as if I had to cancel the session. So I offer a reschedule opportunity or a credit. Technology failures can be anything from widespread internet outages to a specific device failure or a Zoom blackout. Sometimes these things are very brief, and it's a matter of restarting a device or restarting a router, or sometimes I'll hop on my phone if my house internet isn't supporting the meeting. I'll hop on Zoom on my phone. These things can all be brief and temporary, or they can wipe out a whole session. So don't be too specific in your policies, because there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of different things that you could be dealing with. think about your bare bones lesson. Think about if you have to do it without video, or if you have to teach from your cell phone camera instead of your laptop, or if the student can see you but they can't see the screen share. What will you do? How can you make the most of their time? Are there activities, phonemic awareness, vocabulary games, grab a book and read to me, I'll grab a book and read to you? Are there anything, what low-tech things could you do to salvage the lesson if your original plan is not available due to technology problems? Options for backup platforms include Zoom, Google Meet, Skype, FaceTime, Facebook Messenger video calls. There are plenty of ways to do a video call, but they don't all have the screen share capabilities that Zoom does, so it can still disrupt the way your lesson goes. Another way to minimize technology problems on your end is to keep your lessons technologically simple. So keep everything in one program. Like if you're going to present in PowerPoint, put everything in PowerPoint. If you're make sure that all your pages for that day are in one file, copy and paste the text you need into one file. Keep everything in one Chrome browser window with multiple tabs open. Make sure you're minimizing the need to switch between screens. PowerPoint, back to your browser, to Smart Notebook, to an app. Another option for keeping the lesson simple is, instead of you sharing each thing on your screen, send the links to the student for things like videos or games or Google Docs you want them to access. You can create a document, a list, or write it all in an email where you say what each part of the lesson is and the link that they need. And so you can say to them, click on number 1, click on number 3. That's a way to minimize the glitches that can happen with screen sharing, but it can be more of it can make the materials more difficult to manage for the student. So you have to balance the student needs, especially for younger students or less tech-savvy families, with the needs of keeping the actual execution of the activities simple. As an online tutor, I view it as part of my job, part of what I do, to show students how to use the tools we use. So for each new tool you're going to introduce, pick a tutorial. You can find plenty online that you can send to parents. You can create a short video showing how to use a piece of software. You can find one on YouTube for sure. You can find one from the company who makes the program, like Zoom has some nice written tutorials about how to use their features. There are lots of ways to find this information, but preferably in advance of starting to use a tool, send a link to the parents if it's something that they're not familiar with. You can also, in the moment, send screenshots. Either send them in an email to the parents or screen share the screenshot to show the student from Zoom. Unfortunately, in Zoom, the default is that the student can't see your Zoom window. Now that's for the best, because if they could see their annotate bar and your annotate bar, there would be an overwhelming amount of information on the screen. So the default for Zoom is that the windows that are part of Zoom are hidden in your screen share view. Unfortunately, when you're trying to teach a student something like how to share the screen or how to turn on annotate, it's difficult to show them what the button looks like because they can't see your Zoom menu and you can't see theirs. So you can select that in the Zoom settings. It says show Zoom windows during screen share, and it's under the screen share settings. And then you can model things on the Zoom shared screen and then have them do it. And then finally, if something is difficult, and a lot of these things are difficult to explain verbally, especially to kids who don't have a lot of technology with the tools, have them grab a parent and say, we're gonna do something new. Is somebody around to help you set it up? This is what it looks like in the Zoom menu. It's under the screen share settings. And you can choose this box, show Zoom windows during screen share. And that lets you show what you're doing in the Zoom program to your student. These are some technology requests I've made of my students that help support them in having things go smoothly in the lesson. Over-ear headphones are my preference, especially for students in busy households where the TV's on in another room and kids are bopping back and forth. Having the headphones on helps them keep focused in the lesson, and it also makes it easier for them to hear differences that can be subtle between speech sounds for phonemic awareness and for reading. I also recommend that students use a computer mouse instead of a laptop touchpad. Although if they have a touchscreen computer, that can be really nice too. Those are becoming a little more common. But it can be difficult to drag and drop and to draw lines with a finger on the touchpad, and for many students it's easier on the computer mouse. The rest of my materials requests are non-tech, which is important too. Expectations for parents. It's important to let parents know what their role will be in supporting students in the lesson, especially around their use of technology. So in my policies and in my initial emails, I give them names of software or apps they need to have installed and working. So they need to have Zoom on their device. I send them the link to my meeting and let them try it out. They're responsible for making sure devices are charged in advance of sessions. And they will have to teach the child how to open links, open shared docs, download attachments. So that may mean the parent has to sit in on the first lesson or be within earshot for many lessons, or it may mean that the parent themselves needs to up their tech skills a little bit to do these things with the student. And finally, if it's a situation where adults aren't available to supervise or don't know themselves how to use the tools, online tutoring might not be the right fit for the family. And that's okay. I think in 2020, we've struggled a lot with getting everybody on for online lessons. But if you're thinking about running your own tutoring company long term, it's okay to say this tutoring service works best or only works if parents are available to do X, Y, and Z. And it's okay to decline new clients, and it's okay to discourage clients from signing up with you if they don't seem to have what they need to hold up their end of that relationship. And no matter how well you are prepared with your technology or with your lesson, glitch happens. The most common thing that happens for me in Zoom meetings is a poor connection, either audio or video. Sometimes Zoom will say your internet connection is unstable, and that's a hint to me that the problem is happening at my home internet, so that the signal coming into the house is not strong enough, does not have enough bandwidth to support the Zoom meeting and the other things that are going on the network. Sometimes the student tells me they're getting that message, and other times the poor connection is happening somewhere in between, including at the level of the Zoom service. So some things that you can do when this is happening are check your internet connection. And if it's you, if your internet tends to be a little slow, or if in that moment your internet is a little slow, plug in if you have an Ethernet cable, or plug in directly to the network instead of using Wi-Fi. If students tend to have a slow internet connection, suggest that they have a wired plugged in internet connection instead of Wi-Fi in the house. Ask the family to reduce the devices using the network during your session. That might mean minimizing downloads or streaming services, or scheduling your tutoring at a time that nobody else is also on a video call. In the short term, to just try to get through the session, it's often helpful to turn off your camera and theirs. There are two reasons that works. One, video takes up bandwidth, so if you take the video out of the equation, there's more space for the audio to come in clearly and in a timely manner without glitches and pauses. The other thing is, my students are often very distracted if my mouth doesn't match what they're hearing. And so by turning off the video, I can end the conversation about how my face is freezing and how my mouth and my sounds aren't matched up. So sometimes just it's enough to get the student to focus back on the lesson. Sometimes you can disconnect and reconnect in a session, and you'll get a better connection the second time. It's worth a try. If you do have a technology glitch, it's important to stay calm and steer the lesson to something that does work. Sometimes I'll find that we have part of the session, a span of 5 to 10 minutes, where the signal is a little weaker. That's a time that I might give the student a link to a review activity that they can open on their own computer. And I'll ask them to screen share, and sometimes I can see what they're doing, and sometimes I can't see it well. But I can hear them talking, and I can hear if they're engaged in the activity. Sometimes if I'm having trouble with shared documents or the signal's a little slow, I'll stop the screen share and move to spelling dictation or phonemic awareness, because that doesn't rely on them seeing the shared screen. There may be times when you say, oh, this is the part of the story where I'm going to read to you. This is the part of the lesson where I'm going to read you a story, or where you're going to grab your independent reading book and read to me. You may have to fill some gaps sometimes. Very rarely I have had to end a session early because the signal was just so persistently bad and the student was getting frustrated. But it's rare that those problems last longer than a few minutes, or that we can't find a substitute activity to get around them. So that is your crash course in how to do tech support for online tutoring. It can be a lot. It can be overwhelming. Hopefully the families that you're working with know what they're getting into and are prepared with their own technology. And for the most part, you just have to manage your own devices in the session. It can seem really overwhelming at first, but you'll find over time that there are few different kinds of things that happen. So, for example, my computer, I don't know why, every once in a while, the audio just stops working. So I thought I had it fixed for a while, and it has started to happen again. So what I do is I always have my phone handy, and if my computer audio cuts out and it's halfway through a session, I join the session on my phone. And so I'll have video from my webcam and I'll have audio through my phone, and I just plug my earbuds right into it, and we can continue the session that way. So you'll start to know your own technology and your own limits, but it's important to think outside the box and realize there are different ways to do these things. And so if you have a backup plan for the different things that do go wrong, you'll be able to continue to deliver your lessons. And sometimes your students will never even realize that you've had to change your plan. So practice with a friend, practice over time with your students, and you're going to start to feel really good about solving technology problems. I promise.